Anakin. Don't do Anakin.
Yes, Master.
I've made videos about all kinds of controversial shit, but this is the one that's gonna be the base breaker. The Star Wars prequels, you know, The Phantom Menace, the second one, Revenge of the Sith, they were kinda okay. I mean, they were by no means good movies. You might even say that they were a little bit bad movies, right? But at the end of the day, they were mediocre. Not the worst thing that's happened since the Michael Bay reboot of Citizen Kane. I've actually watched all the prequels again before making this video, so nobody can come at me now and say, ugh, you only think they were okay because you forgot all the bad parts. I am keenly aware of all the bad parts. The worst thing was Anakin. I mean, child Anakin already is so... I want to just punch him in the face. But Hayden Christensen's performance over the following two movies is just utterly atrocious. Then again, it is Hayden Christensen, so... I mean, I don't know how he got his career in Hollywood, but judging by what we know now about the City of Angels, it may or may not have involved handling some lightsabers, if you know what I mean. As long as he wasn't raped, this joke is completely okay, so get off my ass, Scottish police. The whole thing with the actors, right, that's the biggest travesty of these films. They had this A-list cast of some of the best actors in the entire world, and George Lucas's sheer ineptitude as a director made them look like preschoolers performing the Christmas play. Fucking Samuel L. Jackson, Ewan McGregor, Liam Neeson, all of them absolute all-stars, yet somehow they're just awkward as a motherfucker on screen. This is actually how A-list this cast is, right? Warwick Davis had a non-speaking role as essentially an extra, and Dominic West is credited as Palace Guard. I guess after the end of The Wire, they did send him as far, far away from Baltimore as they possibly could. Natalie Portman and Christopher Lee did alright though, I mean, credit where it's due. I mean, I'm sure all of the actors did their best considering the circumstances. But let's talk about what's good about the prequels, shall we? The sound design was on fucking point. It's some of the best audio work that you will ever see in any movie, and it's even better than the originals, which were also excellent in that department. Just listen to these sounds, right? It's some of the most distinctive, setting-appropriate shit you will ever hear. And the same goes really for the vast majority of Star Wars products that include any kind of sound. They just know how to do it. And also, the soundtrack was amazing. But come on, it's John Williams. He could make great music if he was deaf. Pod racing. It's fucking brilliant. I mean, Jesus Christ, if that is not the most badass way to sci-fi race, I don't know what is. It's high stakes, high speed, high adrenaline, with these beastly vehicles that just look like they have so much power behind them. We need a new pod racing game, by the way, not EA. Like, really not EA, just anyone but EA at this point. Speaking of pod racing, the vehicle design, right? I think the prequels do a much better job at capturing the vastness of the Star Wars universe than the originals did, which I think should be that way. And nowhere is this better exemplified than in the vehicle design. It just feels as though all of these vehicles were designed in a hugely varied galaxy, with millennia of history and cultural development. I mean, I know that the jury-rigged backwater charm is something that made the original films very memorable, but it would just look extremely out of place in what basically amounts to the capital of the galaxy. Besides, I know that many of these vehicles look fucking weird, but do we really need more generic spaceship vehicle designs that just say nothing and have nothing unique about them at all, except that they need to prove that they are advanced technology? And this theme of expansive diversity is just present throughout the alien architecture and the alien races and the fucking items. Every place that the films visit is unique and odd and special. And a lot of people say that the films got too caught up in this whole world building, But they didn't, really. The world building just made what was going on screen more interesting and distinctive for each place. It didn't really hog much of the screen time in terms of dialogue. But then I am a huge fan of world building, so... I love Camino. I don't know why. It's just something that does it for me. This juxtaposition of the violent storm and this really peaceful, white, clean interior. I don't know. It's my favorite place in the Star Wars universe, and I couldn't even tell you why. Overall, in spite of the terrible CGI, the prequels are much more visually stunning than the originals. And the originals didn't exactly lack in that department either. It's just that the prequels have so much interesting shit going on all of the time. It irritates me to no end that literally all of the terrible CGI could have been done so much better with practical effects. I mean, it's not like they should have lacked the budget for that. But at least make the main characters not CGI. Make them practical effect puppets and all that shit. Jesus Christ, especially if you had that shit left over from the original films. But no, George Lucas is so enamored with CGI that he even retroactively fucked up the original films with it. I firmly hold that if only there had been more practical effects, the prequels would have been 1,000,000 times better. But Burger, 1,000,000 times 0 is still 0. So shut the fuck up or I'll come to your house and put your fucking occipital lobe in a blender and then feed it to your dog. Well, fucking checkmate, atheists. I don't have a dog. Now, despite all this, the battles were pretty damn impressive. Especially the lightsaber fights. I get why they weren't action fests in the original films, right? It makes sense for the film production and the budget and the technology at the time, right? But they saw an opportunity to do something awesome with the prequels, and then they got the most out of it, right? I mean, fucking both Darth Maul and Count Dooku are brilliant to look at. Another thing that was great about the prequels was the story. Yeah, no, that sentence isn't over, but I just couldn't resist making you think that it was for just a moment. It's not really so much that the story was actually cool, but the overarching political story that the prequels tried and failed to tell was very interesting. I know people go, politics has nothing to do in a plot because it's so boring. And all of those people have never watched House of Cards. It's a story about a Machiavellian genius using the power of victimhood to transform a democracy into a tyranny. It's a highly relevant political story. It was just very, very poorly executed. We do see in the films that Sidious wields victimhood just as well as he wields the Force, right? The scene alone where he manages to portray himself as this dying and weak old man being destroyed by an overzealous Mace Windu, while at the same time also offering to Anakin the power to save Padme without that illusion of weakness breaking. This is a man who used political subterfuge to create an enemy that the Republic could fear and which could victimize him, so he would gain power inside of the Republic and expand the Republic's military power as per both his mandate and also his personal long-term goal. He then uses that new military power to tie up the loose end which he originally used to create all the fear and problems in the first place, aka the Trade Federation. He then successfully shifts the focus of people's fear on an organization that is seen as the embodiment of good. But the way he manages to orchestrate it makes it look as though he is now the victim of the Jedi, much as he was the victim of the Federation back when they were blockading his homeworld. That is how he consolidates power and keeps all the might that he has amassed for the Republic intact and ready for his personal use. Also, he just casually manipulates the most powerful Force user of all time into no longer being the most powerful Force user of all time, so he cannot threaten his position as Emperor. Yeah, Anakin actually lost a lot of his Force powers when he got cyborged. Look it up. Was Palpatine being Sidious actually a reveal at any point? Like, I'm genuinely curious. I don't know. Because even if you were unaware that Palpatine was Sidious, I mean, you would have gone, yeah, that the bad guy had Ian McDiarmid's face from the nose down since the very first movie, so I am not surprised. On a related note, there's actually a series of videos that is very good that explores how the prequels could have been made good. And they primarily achieve this by shifting the focus from Anakin to Obi-Wan, which has the great advantage that we don't hear anything about fucking sand ever. I never wanted to see that Natalie Portman pedo shit. Like, how the fuck did she not age for 10 years? I'll put a link in the doobly-doo if you want to see those videos. But let's talk about Jar Jar Binks. I hate him, you hate him, yet somehow everybody in the Star Wars universe fucking loves him. And that is because children fucking love him. You need to understand that the prequel trilogy was always going to be a series of kids' movies, and I think that is the fundamental problem with the entire production. Because the people who would actually go to the cinemas in large swathes would be adults, who had already seen the original films, which were a monumentally influential work in their childhood and for their development. But the Star Wars franchise was already a bit of a toy empire at the time. So, to be able to sell a maximum amount of toys, Lucas had to enthrall an entirely new generation of people, Star Wars fans, which would have been the kids, because kids are the primary consumers of toys. Maybe the prequels would have been made more for grown-ups in the current climate of grown-ups actually buying toys for themselves. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I just think that maybe we should be honest about what we're doing here, right? I mean, you know, I say we, I mean you. I don't really do that. I would if I had the money. I mean, there's a lot of shit that I really need that is completely useless. But, you know, right now it's mostly you. So that's why Jar Jar Binks exists, right? The executives thought to themselves, oh, we must appeal to the child demographic. And then they asked themselves, what is it that the child demographic likes? And if you've ever been around young children, you know that what they like most is annoying shit. Or like the fucking, like a fucking Barbie doll. It has like a button, and when you press it, then she screams like a fucking banshee. And then your little sister stands at 7 in the morning next to the couch that you're still sleeping on, and she holds it to your ear, and it goes, Wah! The prequels actually work best if you watch the original films first, because they're mostly fan service. And fan service without the context of the original work makes no fucking sense. So if some young dad went to the cinema with his young kids to see the Star Wars prequels, chances are he would already have shown them the original films first, which would mean that the children would already be enthralled by the Star Wars franchise, which would mean that Jar Jar fucking Binks is utterly superfluous. But it's executives, so, you know. What do you expect? This is also why you didn't see much of Jar Jar anymore in episode 2 and 3, right? The target demographic of Jar Jar Binks had outgrown being able to bear such an unbearable fucking piece of shit character. Even with the completely factual knowledge that Jar Jar Binks is actually the most powerful Sith Lord of all time, which is of course canon and not some weird conspiracy theory, he's still shit. As a side note, right? The whole being kid-friendly thing is also why they humanized the droid army in the way they did, right? They turned them into a slapstick cannon fodder instead of the terrifying robot army that they should have been. But at the end of the day, though the prequels had a lot of terrible stuff in them, they were mediocre, right? Because they also had a lot of great stuff in them. And I think that is exactly why people hate them so much. And why they nitpick them in the way they do. They really want to hate the Star Wars prequels, right? And things in the Star Wars prequels that they would have loved in any other film, even a Star Wars film, right? They just say that they don't like it in that movie. They don't like it. That's bad movie making. The expectations to follow up such an amazing franchise as the original Star Wars films were already too high for any movie to ever reach them. But when the movies then came out, and it turned out they were meh more than anything else, they became the worst thing ever. Most mediocre films we just eventually forget about, because they just can't stand on their own. But we can't forget about the prequels, because they're attached to this amazing thing that a lot of people have exclusively positive associations with. They sully the memory of the original Star Wars trilogy, which is a formative work and has been a formative work for many generations since it originally came out. And that sacrilege is what people cannot forgive, right? It's the same reason for when you like a franchise and then a mediocre product of that franchise comes out, you hate it more than you should. Because after all, we are most critical of the things we love. I also thought that Rogue One was alright. I mean, I liked that they went away from the monomyth thing for like a little bit of excursion. I mean, I know the film could have easily been much better, but you know, it was okay and kind of cool sometimes even. There's actually a film theory, yes, that film theory, that if they had done what he thought that they were going to do, then Rogue One would have been a really good film. But unfortunately, Theory Guy wasn't correct on that note. I also enjoyed The Force Awakens because they did a great job of just capturing the original feel of the Star Wars films, of the original Star Wars films. And they also did a great lot of work with really good practical effects, which the prequels really sucked at, as we have already established. Yeah, Rey is just boring, like she's 100% Mary Sue, even confirmed by Daisy Ridley herself, who said that she had no flaws, while at the same time stating that Rey was not a Mary Sue. I mean, Jesus, come on, it's not that difficult to look up what a Mary Sue is, right? Go on TV Tropes. I'll put the link in the description, Daisy, so you can look for yourself what a Mary Sue is. Well, while we're on that subject, right? This whole, we need powerful female role models for all the little girls that have always loved Star Wars just as much as the boys. Shut the fuck up, market research doesn't exist. The problem is not so much the attitude, because, I mean, you know, make strong female characters. It's interesting, right? I invite it. But a role model for someone, right, isn't a person who is perfect in every way and indestructible and can never do wrong and everybody always likes them. How the fuck would you put that kind of pressure to be perfect on a child? What the fuck is wrong with you people? A hero and role model with which people can identify and which people can strive to be is one that is heroic in spite of their flaws, right? Telling kids and also adults everywhere that yes, you may not be a perfect person. There may be things wrong with you, but you can still be a superhero. But with Rey, it's just, hey little girl, you better now have a stunning and excellent academic career and a rich social life with many friends, and you better be a billionaire by when you're 20, because otherwise you're not gonna be perfect, because you have to be like Rey, and Rey is utterly fucking perfect. It just bothers me, right? Kids are important, and to fuck them up like this is it's disingenuous. Especially if you're going to go on about how you're doing a service to little girls. No, you're not. You just aren't. You just don't know what the fuck you're doing. So if after all of this vast explanation, right, you still believe that the prequels were the worst thing ever instead of just mediocre films, I posit this to you. Prequel memes. Were these films not worth it for the prequel memes? I say yes. Personally, even actually terrible films would have been worth it for prequel memes. Because prequel memes, and this has been scientifically proven, are the second best type of meme that exists after grok posting, you know, because, I mean, grok posting is the highest form of political discourse. Thank you very much for watching this video. As you can probably hear, my voice is a little hoarse. But then I'm a flawed character, you know, this is what I have to do to be appealing to my audience. Do all the things with the video, subscribe to me, support me on PayPal and make a support, and also come join my Discord. We got cool shit over there. Hang out with the guys. In that spirit, see you around, cunts.